So continuing on with the story, after Valentine's Day and closer towards the end of February, we were planning for our next date. And when I called Brittany and asked her what she wants to do, she gives me two options. She says that we can either go to the movie theaters, or her former youth minister, who is now a pastor and has his own church, has this session called True Love Waits. But she said it doesn't matter which one I choose, she's cool with either one. And I was thinking, I'll try the church thing, even though I still was going back and forth, because I was thinking to myself, well, you know, they're only going to tell me the same thing that they always say, which is basically abstinence is key. But I decided to go. We end up going. Of course, when we get there, everyone's kind of quiet and kind of timid. So I figured, hey, these people don't know me from Adam, so I'm going to go ahead and just talk and say whatever. But I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of the answers the pastors gave there, and it made me want to continue to go back to ask even more questions, because this was the first time I ever went to a church that where you ask certain questions, no matter how taboo they were, he actually answered them. So I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So we ended up going for the rest of the session. It ended up being pretty good. And of course, Brittany and I ended up making the vow that we were not gonna have sex again until we got married. And I'll be honest, hopefully I will never have to make such a voluntary vow ever again in my life. But the good thing that came out of that, when the whole session was over and I ended up taking her home, we finally sat down in the car, we had a conversation, and we finally made it official and became boyfriend and girlfriend, no longer being friends with benefits. So now we're going into March, and of course, now that we're in a serious relationship, the conversation of marriage pops up every once in a while, but of course we're talking about in a future sense where it'll be like 2, 3, 4 years from now when she finished school and I start going to school and also finish as well. But during a date one Friday night, we decided on Saturday we would take my brother to the zoo in downtown DC, but she told me she had to go to a library committee meeting at her church first that morning, and then she would be available. So when I think like 12 o'clock rolled around and me and my brother got in my car to get ready to head over to her house, she called me and told me that she wasn't at home but was still at the church. Well, unfortunately, her and her older sister, they had a disagreement about something. Instead of riding home with her, she stayed at the church. But when I picked her up, you could tell that her spirits were down a little bit, but I was thinking, well, we're still gonna have fun by going to the zoo. So we went to the zoo, had a good time, and then after the zoo, we ended up going to Pentagon City Mall. And while at the mall, we ended up going to Zales. Now, the whole purpose of going in Zales was not to buy a ring, but to look at rings so I would have an idea of what she would like whenever the time came for me to buy one, to then later on propose. And we ended up going around looking at a couple of rings, and she saw one that she actually liked. And seeing the price and seeing that it was under $700, I was like, I wonder if I could or not. So the lady ran my credit, and come to find out I was approved for store credit, and I got the ring that day. Of course, it had to be resized, but that definitely put a smile on her face, because, you know, it's like now this was becoming more and more real. But I still wasn't planning on proposing anytime soon. Fast forward to April. Things got serious. We were talking about more and more about a possible engagement, and something happened. And I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to propose. So it was one particular night, we went out to Olive Garden, but instead of proposing in the Olive Garden, because I knew she was going to say yes, but instead of proposing in the Olive Garden, I punked out and proposed in the parking lot in the dark. And she wasn't a fan of that, so she ended up making me have to propose again. But for that night, we ended up going to the mall where I was working at, and then, you know, Tony and a couple other people saw that we were engaged, and it was official. Even though we didn't tell everybody just yet, we still kept that on the hush, or kept that on the low. Now, fast forward again to August. So here we are in August, my birthday rolls around, I turned 21 years old. We ended up doing something on my birthday. I can't remember exactly what it was we did on my actual birthday, but then later on that week, she invited me over because we were supposed to go out to dinner that night. So I get over there, and when I get to her house and she opens the door, she still has a robe on. I'm thinking, you're not ready yet? So I sit on the couch, and then about 10-15 minutes later, she comes down the stairs and this.
Oh my God!
Yeah. So just when I think we're about to leave out, she instead takes my hand and walks me downstairs in the basement to where I see a table set up with 2 candles and my favorite meal, chicken parmesan. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, this was a pleasant surprise. So, you know, we ate, we talked, and then I opened up gifts. I got a couple of cards, gift cards, but she bought this photo album that had our names engraved in it. So I'm like, okay, this is for real, for real. Like, you don't get your name engraved and stuff unless you really do see yourself having a future with this individual. And I mean, of course, we were engaged, but I mean, come on, we were 20, 21 years old. So, you know, the whole marriage part wasn't supposed to take part 2 years after that. But while seeing her in that blue dress, one thing led to another. We didn't have sex, but one thing led to another. I said, you know what? I can't take this anymore. We're gonna get married. So sure enough, that next day we went to the courthouse. We were able to get our marriage license, and at the time, this was back in early 2000, it cost $55, and I think the ceremony itself was gonna cost $25. And we said, you know what, we're gonna do it. So then 48 hours later, it was a Wednesday on August 14th, 2002, driving down to the courthouse. We both looked at each other and said, hey, if you want to back out at any time, now's the time to do it. She said, nope. She said, now, if you want to back out, you can. I said, I didn't either. And that's, you know what? We got married. So here's the fun part. This is why we didn't tell anybody for 2 years. While I was working at the mall, I was making probably about $6 an hour at this time. My whole mindset was thinking, as long as you have a job and you have income and you can pay the rent, they'll give you a place. Wrong. They were going by salary, and of course I wasn't making enough, so I couldn't get a place. Yeah, smart way to think all this through. So because we didn't have a place to live, even though we were married, we were still living with our parents in 2 separate places. Yeah, it's foolish. Oh, it gets better. So because of that, we didn't tell them, because we knew if she would have told her parents, I would have told my dad, we would have got kicked out, like point blank period. So yeah, we really didn't think this whole thing through. The other reason why we didn't tell anybody for 2 years, because during the time we were dating, mind you, she was a pre-med student. I was working at a kiosk in the mall. So most of the people's concerns were thinking that she was up here, I was down here as far as potential is concerned. In other words, I was a well-mannered loser. I was a guy who was a nice guy you would have no issues with whatsoever, but I was gonna be that guy that always worked at a Walmart, a Target, or a Safeway, and my potential earnings would probably cap no more than maybe $15, $16 an hour if I'm lucky. So yeah, and hindsight, I can understand that, looking at that, but I was hurt and I was upset because it was like both families were kind of putting me in a box, just saying, you know what, until you do something with your life, you get married is a terrible idea. Even if you getting engaged now and getting married years later, still a bad idea. That's what I had a problem with, and that's why we didn't really, fight too much about it. Now, granted, Brittany did have some words back and forth and got into some disagreements with family members over her decisions. She could be very stubborn at times, but to her credit, usually the things she's stubborn about, she's right about. So instead of just keep fighting people on it, we just kept on living our relationship, dating, so on and so forth. The other thing I forgot to mention though is that when we got married, that's when we told everybody that we got engaged. So during this whole time we were legally married, people just thought we were getting engaged. But this is when people's opinions, feelings, and what they thought about this whole situation was coming out of the woodwork. And the women were the main ones that had the most things to say about this situation. But like I said, looking back now I can understand, but at the time, no, it wasn't pretty at all. Okay, so now that you know why we waited 2 years before telling everybody why we got married, I'm finally gonna tell you all, so why did I decide to get married and why did I do it so young? I wanted to have sex again. Period. Now I know the whole reason why we stopped having sex in the first place was because of religious beliefs, and it ended up lasting 6 months. And yeah, we slipped a few times in those 6 months, but I can say it was one of the best decisions that we made as a couple because, and I can't speak for everybody when I say this, but you're willing to put up with certain behaviors or attitudes or willing to shut your mouth on certain things if you're thinking that sex is going to be taken away or you're going to be punished. But when I knew that sex wasn't an option, I was a whole lot more vocal and a whole lot more honest about things. But it let me see how she handled situations and also how I handled situations and how we tried to work together to make this thing work, because she became my best friend. And I don't know about you, but I don't like being angry at my best friend. I'm more upset being angry at her than I want to be angry at her. So it will always make me want to figure out a way to try to make the things work. It's amazing how you see certain people in relationships that because of sex, and if the sex is good, they'll stick around for a while. But if you were to eliminate that aspect from a relationship, you will truly see just how much you value that relationship or how committed that person will be. But hey, I could be wrong. Like I said, it worked for me in that situation. That was very beneficial. Some of you know this, some of you don't, but I was raised in a single parent household raised by my dad. My mom wasn't always around in my life, but it always seems like she popped up in the most critical times of my life where I needed her the most. And one of the things that she told me when I was about 18 years old is that I need to write a list of what I want in a wife. Now she said, of course, as you get older, that list will change, but just start writing down some things that you like, some things that you dislike, some things that you can tolerate, and some things that you have absolute zero tolerance. Take all these things in consideration. So when I show you this list, be mindful that I was 18, 19 years old when I wrote this. I didn't believe in using a dictionary, and yeah, some of the things would be kind of superficial, but I was young. And pause the video if you want to read the whole thing. Now, as you can see on the list, yeah, there are some things that are superficial, but there's one thing I want you to focus on primarily, and that's the height. My wife is only 5'2", but I was thinking to myself, there is no way that if this woman hit everything else on the list, that I'm gonna let height be the determining factor. It's like, yeah, I don't want to be with you because she was 4 inches too short. Yeah, I would have totally had to.
Slap yourself. Harder.
But this was the determining factor that trumped everything. And that was, I couldn't imagine living my life without her. Just how we started getting more and more serious, how the communication opened up, how she constantly showed that she had my best interest at heart and I had hers as well. She showed me that she was a woman that wanted to build and not destroy. Growing up, I was exposed to a lot of relationships that had nothing but destruction. You see fighting, both verbally and physically. Like, it's just like, it's not something that I wanted, but I still desired to get married. I can honestly say that marriage is not for everybody, but for those who want to get married, you have to know what you're getting into before you do it. I'm very, very grateful, and I'm very, very fortunate. I always tell myself I have one of the greats. Even if anybody who's seen the movie The Bronx Tale and know about the door test, she passed that too. But just so many of the attributes that she brought to the table, I would have been a fool to pass a woman like this up. And even other men have told me that if you mess up, there are other guys in line. That doesn't necessarily mean they were the ones who were next in line, but I definitely understood where they were coming from. Plus, the type of relationship I had with my mom growing up, yeah, I can admit I had trust issues, but this is the first woman I've ever had in my life who wasn't blood related, who I trust 100%. To be able to be married to your lover, your best friend, and the mother of your children, it's a great feeling. Now, does that mean we were perfect? Absolutely not. Of course, we had our growing pains and things that we had to go through, but we went through these things together. I'm very appreciative. I'm very fortunate. You know, for me, as a as a man of African descent, and to find a woman of the same, where in society and on the internet, they try to make it sound like that these type of relationships don't exist. I'm fortunate that I can be part of a relationship that has broken many stereotypes and has also proved a lot of people wrong. I mean, we've heard people tell us that, you know, hey, come see me in 5 years to see if your relationship lasts that long, or I only married her so nobody else can have her. Like, duh, why? That's the whole reason why you get married. And just how, other than one cousin that I have in Georgia, most people can only focus on where we were instead of seeing any potential. But one thing I'm very grateful for is that Brittany saw the potential in me. When I told her that I was what I wanted to do, about going to school, about getting a particular job. Right now, yes, I do make enough money that I can provide for a wife and children, whether she works or not. But nobody else saw that then. But she did. She believed in me. She had my back, and it's not changed. And I'm just gonna end the video by saying this. All of the attributes and things that she brought to the table and things that I saw then, not only has she met my expectations so far in this marriage, but she superseded them. There is no other woman on the face of this earth that I would want to call my wife and have my last name than her, you know, point blank period. I knew who I was, and I knew what I was bringing to the table, and I knew who she was and what she was bringing to the table. Instead of coming to the table just looking to see what you can eat, we brought both qualities to the table that I knew was going to be very beneficial. Now, I couldn't say for a fact that I'll be sitting before you right now saying that I knew for a fact that we were going to be where we were, but the fact that we had that hope, that belief, that trust in each other, and that unconditional love, yeah, I can say that even though it wasn't guaranteed, you know, I'm not surprised, but I don't take it for granted. I'm gonna stop before I start crying on camera and all this other stuff like that. You know, I can go on and on about this, but leave any questions or comments in the comment section below, because I know there's probably some things I glossed over or skipped on. So if you want to know, feel free to ask and I will answer them. And I also appreciate you all sitting through all these story times. I have many more, but that's it. I rambled long enough. So as always, be wise. And until I see you guys next time, have a great weekend.